do that. Nama Om Vishnu Badaya Krishna Padaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasisha Sunyavari Pashtatara Sataline Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So welcome Pushpa Rajini as well, Mother Nirvana. Thank you for joining us again. And so what was last week's discussion? Any little bullet points? Let's let Vijay in while I'm trying to bring up the... Put you on the spot again. Hope you don't mind me asking you questions. What's the general discussion last week?
There was, I remember there was the motives behind the service. I know you've read from
Yeah,
the 870 something different motives.
the 800 odd, that's going back a couple of weeks. You're going back a couple of weeks.
And then you mentioned about the if we have to go to Vrindavan, is it necessary? And you quoted Sanatana Goswami, I think.
Okay,
Or
something there. That was about devotional renunciation. I can see Mother Sahachari is looking at the textbook. So what do you have down there, Mother Sahachari?
We discussed about the secondary characteristics.
Yes.
Especially Anyabhilasita, Anyabhilasita, Tatu, something you discussed, Sunyam.
Yes.
We should be always free from ulterior motives.
Yes, correct. That's it. Thank you. You've taken us in the right direction. Yeah, remember we had quite some discussion on Anyabhilasita, remember? So I'll ask a bit more of a difficult question. See if someone else other than Mother Sahachari can. What was all that about? That discussion of that ta. Anyabhilasita. Ta. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Mother Sahachari, you have notes there?
I think it's free from desires. Abhilasha means desiring.
Yeah.
Means free from desire, something like.
Oh, yeah. So perhaps yeah, it's just there's some people there want to come in. Yeah, so let's just quickly flash through what we did last week, just as a reminder for myself as well. Okay, so yes, we're discussing continuous discussion on defining pure devotional service according to Rupa Goswami's definition in Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu. And we're discussing these secondary characteristics, which happens to be the first 2 lines. So we discussed about that. And so always free of ulterior desires. But then we brought up in this discussion the actual desires for the maintenance of life is not outside. It doesn't mean you're not the pure devotee if you're desiring to get a job to pay the bills. Okay, that's anyabhilasita. So that incorporates the inherent desire for the living entity. Yeah, and we brought up the example if a devotee's life is in danger and he cries out to Krishna, then it is not against the principles of pure bhakti, because his life is dedicated to Krishna. So we discussed that. We won't go through the whole class again. So we'll just give a few bullet points. So the basic necessities of life, the things to maintain the body. Then we brought up this here. One should accept those things, set aside himself for his quota. And then we brought up that an interesting understanding here is that different people have different quotas in life. So that's to be understood. When we're speaking about that, it's not all one. The devotees are in different stations in life. Like I gave the example, if me as a brahmachari, I'm desiring a 5-bedroom house, and I think I chose Richmond. Richmond on the sea. Wouldn't it be so good? You know, I'm happy here. I'm in, well, guess I've got a little council flat in Camden, a little studio council flat in Camden. So that's my quota. I'm not going to bother for anything else, you know. And it's a brahmachari ashram. Okay, so yeah, so should we give up the desire to advance in devotional service? What's the answer to that? No. We mentioned somewhere when we speak about being free of desire, some devotees sometimes, normally younger devotees think, should I even desire to advance then? No, you should desire to advance in devotional service. We described that. And do unwanted desires that linger disqualify devotees from practicing pure devotion? No, they necessarily do not. So we had a discussion on that. We should insulate if generally we might well have, but we accept the principles of the practice of pure devotional service. So we insulate those desires which may take us away from that. And then we brought up this as well. What is the mentality of a pure devotee? Interesting, you know, the mentality of someone on the path of pure devotion who may succumb to their lower nature. It may well happen. And we upset to Suddha. I think we had that was quoted last week as well. So we brought this verse up from the 11th canto. This is the mentality of such a devotee, of a sincere devotee. Okay, I'll read it quickly. Having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, what should the devotee do? The devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction, although he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment. My devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to an undesirable result, and he sincerely, what's that thing? Sincerely, yeah, such activities. And there's a bit more of, and I think I read out aloud a verse which also encapsulates that. All right. Any questions as we're going? We're just doing a quick review. And let me just let this devotee in. And we spoke about devotional renunciation. I think this is what Alexander Prabhu was remembering, this point, devotional renunciation. And what did we bring up here? What was the basic discussion here? This verse, this this slide, you got this picture here, Oxford Street.
I think it was about the Vrindavan, the question about should we live in Vrindavan, and then you mentioned that Rupa Goswami said something that we don't necessarily have to live.
Well, it's definitely, yeah, well, it's definitely favorable to living the holy dharmas. It's definitely favorable for devotional service. But this is speaking about persons who may do solitary, or they may go to the Himalayas for solitary practice of meditation, etc. Yeah, they select the place which is most conducive for that. But that's not generally possible. So for the people in general, especially a worldwide ISKCON movement, not everyone's going to be able to live in Vrindavan or go to the Himalayas. So how do we remain living in cities and the metropolis of the world, surrounded by temptations to spend and buy, you know, and, you know, so many temptations are there. You know, there must be, walking down one street in London, there must be 15 different types of food you can eat from different countries. Anyway, so how to remain aloof from sense objects? Let me just get it here. So here. I read this here. According to the Acharya, Rupa Goswami, an imperishable armor is created by combining pure devotional service and a proper attitude towards the material world. So what's that proper attitude?
Correctly situated in their determination.
Yeah, that's correct. But the attitude is everything's for Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's for Krishna. All flowers are for Krishna. All foodstuff is for Krishna. So we're here, we're engaging with the sense objects, but we want to bring money and everything into Krishna's service. And that's a pure devotee, even if they're living in the middle of Dubai or wherever you may be in the world. If you keep this, and that's the mentality of the spiritual realm, then one is like this verse in Bhagavad Gita. They're like the lotus, it's within the water, but it's untouched. And this, we concentrated that the main discussion on this subject was this verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anashakta Vishayam Yapaham Bhayunjata Nibandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Varakam Uchate. So the discussion on that was all on devotional renunciation was based on that. And we gave the example of false renunciation, falgo renunciation. And then finally, we spoke about the six Goswamis. Although Rupa Goswami, he encapsulated this term, Yukta Vairagya, because his service didn't specifically need much. He didn't have much. Yeah, he just, as we know, these Goswamis live very, very simply, because their service they didn't need it. So we should keep that in mind as well, that in the name of Yukta Vairagya, we don't come in contact with material opulence that we're unable to dovetail in Krishna's service. So we have to be a little bit careful as well. Okay, so that was last week in 10 minutes. Okay. So shall we go on? Yes, roar of approval. Chandravali is nodding your head. Yes. Go ahead. So liberation. So just like desires for what's known in Sanskrit as bhakti, that means enjoyment, but also the desire for mukti. When is my mukti? That also has to go as well. So in that regards, where aspirations are quite high. So it actually is the highest, the pure devotion is the highest. This is what Rupa Goswami is giving us. So not only should we, often this has to be cultivated, this desire to be free from liberation, or it has to be understood. So we're going to speak about this so it's clearly understood. Yes, Alexander Ji.
Prabhu, you're not recording, are you?
Oh, thank you. Okay, more.
It's getting recorded.
It is.
I thought, yeah,
Is it?
The red button is on.
Okay.
yeah, I clicked it. Well, you
Okay.
recording it.
Okay, I'm doing this so often that I forget I even clicked the record button. You ever done that when you walk out your front door and you can't remember whether you've locked it?
Uh-huh.
It's so
All the
distracting
time.
all the time.
Whether you turn the gas off or not.
Anyway, we're being recorded, so watch out. It may be taken as evidence and used against us in the court of law.
Mhm.
Okay. So we should be not only ultimately we want to cultivate this to be free from obviously the desire for impersonal liberation. Okay. That's the obvious one. Okay. But also we should be free of the desire for any type of spiritual emancipation. It's called. So this verse comes up. Yeah, a pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation. Salokya, so Salokya means living on the same planet as the Lord. Sashti means having the same opulence as the Lord. Samipya means being near the Lord. And Surupa means having the same features of the Lord. So wait a minute, we have to be free of the desire to be with Krishna, to be near Krishna. Yeah. Yes, we do have to be free of that desire. So we're trying to I came across something just the other day by Jiva Goswami, which gave me an interesting insight into this, which very simply he explained, and I took notes of it here. But before we get there, this is very much exemplified by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shishashtakam. Nadanam najanam nasundaram kavatam bhadadagishnam jagadisha kamaye mama janmani janmanisware bhagavat bhakti ahoiti deve. So I've no desire to accumulate wealth. I've no desire to for beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. You know, I mean, I have a bit of an issue with our birthday song that we sing. What do you think? Hare Krishna to you, Hare Krishna to you. May you never take birth again. Hare Krishna to you. I always add, may you never take birth again except to serve Krishna. Hare Krishna to you. So this is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shastakam. So he's showing us what is an actual pure soul, you know, so we can cultivate that. So it's good just by reading this, it has an impression upon us, you know. But back to this point, where did I put that note? I pasted and copied it. Don't tell me I lost it. Oh, here, yeah. So Jiva Goswami, he mentions that devotees, when it's mentioned, you know, they don't desire to shashti, be in the same planet as Krishna, etc. What do they do? The only thing they desire is the happiness of devotional service. Just like, for instance, if when you're chanting your japa, what are we trying to experience? That's the question. What do we want to experience?
Love for Krishna.
Love, yeah. We want to experience devotion. That's our desire. It's not as if we're chanting Hare Krishna. Oh, I want to get out of here and go to Goloka Vrindavan. Now, devotees will accept these if they're favorable for devotional service, and ultimately devotees do go to the spiritual world. You understand, but their prime motive is not to get out. Their prime motive is to develop loving devotional service to the Lord. Then we have that other verse as well. Narayana Parasavi na Kushtani na Pipite Swagapavaka Narakeshu Apitu Asha Darshanaha. So this is, who's that verse? Marj Chitraketu, when he's cursed by Parvati to have a demon's body, then he accepts it. And then Lord Shiva glorifies. Just see the devotees of the Lord. They don't mind wherever they take birth, as long as they can serve the Lord. So that's the type of mentality, that's the type of mindset that we want to cultivate. So in other words, the only motive is to please Krishna, as we mentioned before, to please Krishna, to please his devotees, to please the spiritual master. Of course, we'll accept these four kinds of liberation if it pleases Krishna. Yeah. So then Maharaj, he brings up about devotees and their selfless nature. And he gives a classic example of being freed from desire for reward in something which we're all familiar with. It's part of our culture and our ISKCON society. And that's to, for instance, public sankirtan, Maharaj mentions here, or book, let's just say book distribution, you know. So it's they perform sankirtan for their own spiritual benefit and a benefit for others. So even though it may be difficult, even though one may be ridiculed. I remember when I first did sankirtan many years ago, when I first was taken out on book distribution, I was really nervous. I remember sitting in the back of the car and looking at the people on the street that I would have to go and speak to. I was really nervous. But I had some things came up with me in the first few weeks. It's the first time I've actually, in my life, that I met people who hated me and avoided me. Of course, I had probably some issues when I was young with enemies and friends, but to the point where people would, swear at me, would ignore me, would make it known what they felt about. I've never met them in my life, So I had to really dig down for why I was doing it. It is not for me. It is for the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it was really in that sense, it was really a fulfilling, really a deep experience because it is a selfless thing. Sometimes when you're faced with being on the street 5 or 6 hours and you really, there ain't nothing here for me materially, there's nothing. And then you surrender to to the duties that you're given. And that could be the same for activities in the temple as well. We we in festivals and serving the Lord, we kind of sacrifice our time. It's good. So we're developing this spirit of and Yabilasata, excuse me, yeah. And so this is good. And then let me see here. Yeah. Then we've heard of Bhajananandis. We heard this word. Generally our movement is Gosti Nandis. Now, we may not be going out every day preaching Sankirtan, book distribution, but we are all part of, you are all part of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. So you're all Gosti Nandis in that point. You're all supporting. Yeah. You're not retired somewhere in the forest somewhere and just concerned about your own self. Some of you are probably donating to different aspects of the Sankirtan movement. Yeah. So making a comparison to what Maharaj describes as spiritually immature Bhajananandis. Now, there are some spiritually mature Bhajananandis. We have some in our disciplic succession, Gaurkasora Das Babaji and Jagannath Das Babaji. But they're mature Bhajananandis and they appreciate the spreading of Krishna consciousness. So generally a Bhajananandi will be doing bhajan exclusively for their own spiritual advancement, rather than take on hardships for serving the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Maharaj mentions here, it hints at a kind of a escapist mentality. So that he brings out that spiritual weakness may well hinder their advancement and has to be cleansed from the soul. Has to be cleansed in order for them to come to pure devotional service, because pure devotional service is ultimately completely selfless. And then he gives Narada Muni as an example. We know that story in Srimad Bhagavatam, where he becomes attached to the forest, to the tranquil atmosphere. And as we know, the Lord appeared to little Narad, but because that attachment was still there, then he said he'll not be able to see him again in this lifetime. That's the whole story. There's other aspects to that. So what Maharaj mentions here, that this example, it means that we shouldn't become attached to the comforts afforded by spiritual life. Yeah, we shouldn't become overly attached to the comforts afforded by spiritual life. It's also known as Trangarangini by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. So delighting in the waves that come from the performance of bhakti. Yeah. So it may be material assets will come, maybe fame will come, maybe material assets will come, etc., and positions and etc. But we should be careful. We want to make sure we're on the path of Anyabilasata Sunyam, and we're not becoming attached to the comforts that come from spiritual life. Yeah? So this is what it means to cultivate this pure devotion. Any questions, please feel free to ask. That's why it's
I-
always good for us to sometimes to do something out the box. You know, the other day I surprised myself. I haven't been on book distribution for quite some time, and I surprised myself and went out on book distribution after some time. I was inspired by Mother Guru Charana Padma's class that she gave, and it was a Saturday what's it called? One day where everyone goes out on books, MF something. You know what it's called?
Sacred Street Party.
Yeah, the street party. So I went out. It's great. It's good. So it's good for us sometimes, you know, to kind of, you know, if we're behind a desk most of the time, or it's good to kind of step outside our comfort zone and do something which is really kind of a selfless. It involves a kind of selfless spirit. You know, it may be difficult. We might go on Harinam or, you know, like that. Okay. Any questions on this? You know,
I was, Mula Prabhu, isn't everybody comfortable in their own living accommodation? Now, wherever they're living, isn't everybody like comfortable? Everybody's like comfortable in their own little, wherever they're living.
well, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, because it creates a peaceful setting and a peaceful environment for us to chant Hare Krishna. You know, but with what's being made, what the point we're making is that just make sure, just be aware that you're not, you know, not going over what may be more. You're not following the path of the materialist. Just keep it simple. It's just mentioned throughout the Bhagavatam many times. So we're not saying live in the forest, live in a hut with holes in the roof. You know, we should be comfortable, but we don't want to live like gross materialists.
Yeah.
We got more important things. So it's intelligent. I think I quoted that verse last week and again this morning. Life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. Kamasya nendriya priti lobo jivata yavata. One should desire. Okay, here's the two things that you're allowed to desire. One should desire never self-preservation, health and self-preservation. Yeah, health and self-preservation. These are the two things we can desire because we're meant to cultivate the desire for a spiritual life. I just have a couple of hands up. I'll go to Alexander, Prabhu said your hand up sometime. Then we'll come to Ramanath Sukha, Prabhu. Yes, Alexander. Sorry, Prabhu. I saw your hand.
I actually have two questions about the these two Gaudiya.
Bhajananandi goes to Nandi.
Yes, Gostyananda and what was the second one?
Gosti Nandi and Bhajana Nandi.
Bhajanandi. Since the Gostyananda is superior to Bhajananandi, and one pretty much supports Mahaprabhu mission and one does not, does that imply that one is pure and one is unpure? And that's the first question. And can Bhajananandi, actually the one who is inclined to Bhajananandi more, but also balance it in one way, attain the highest goal of life, such as, Krishna Loka, for example?
Yes, for sure. So it's a general principle. It is not necessarily that every Gosti Nandi is more advanced than a Bhajana Nandi. Because we're practicing devotional service and devotees of all different levels of practice, and they're dealing with all types, maybe all different types of material attachments. But the nature of the service of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan mission will mean that they're opening up themselves for getting purified quite strongly and quite quickly because of the selfless nature of their surrender. For instance, in distributing books, in maintaining temples, in living in cities and preaching. It's a selfless act. So they're opening up themselves to the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu more than what the Bhajanandi might be. Now, sometimes, as in the case of Jagannath Das Babaji and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, sometimes they're there to show us examples of attachment and perfection in our most important aspects of sadhana, chanting the holy name of the Lord. Yeah, so that has a powerful effect if they're really like Jagannath Das Babaji and Gaura Das Babaji. They were a great inspiration to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but he didn't follow their path. He was empowered to start the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, but to answer your question, it doesn't necessarily mean that maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that every Gosti Nandi is more advanced than a Bhajan Nandi. That'd be a too simple way to characterize things. It may not be like that, but the general purification that takes place by serving and doing selfless acts is very good for one making quite rapid advancement.
Okay, so it goes deeper, and you can advance quicker as Gostyananda.
Yeah, like if you may be doing bhajan somewhere, but if you can go on Oxford Street in the month of December and if you shoot Bhagavad Gita and go on Harinam, you're going to make perhaps might be opening up yourself for a very big dose of mercy from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ramana Sukaprabhu, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this discussion.
Yeah.
I found the general emphasis, of course, of ISKCON, because it's a proselytizing for Chaitanya Sankirtan movement, that obviously the Gosti and Nandi mood is put out there as advantageous. And as you're describing, yes, you can get quick doses of incredible mercy very quickly. So even though a devotee may not have as their main service book distribution or Harinam, that on occasion it's very purifying. It's actually really good to get out there and do those things, as you yourself became inspired to do so just recently. So this is my understanding that in ISKCON, Prabhupada's movement, Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement, that emphasis will be there. That yes, we're there to please Radha and Krishna, go back to the spiritual world, but we please Krishna, we please Radharani, we get the mercy very much by being in that Gosti and Nandi mood and mentality. So it's not that everyone has to be in that mood all the time. Maybe someone likes to chant Hare Krishna extra rounds or whatever. That's good. But at the same time, there has to be that kind of trade-off at times and balance.
Very good point. Thank you. So that's why it's good for us to perhaps, Marge mentions here, I'll just read it. We may be accustomed to managing behind desks in comfortable offices, but we should keep alive that selfless spirit. Sometimes we may take up some service in a temple, which really takes a bit of selfless surrender, and that's good. Yes, thank you, Ramnath Prabhu. Any other questions on this? I pull up another slide. So, pure devotee does not accept any kind of liberation, salokya, shashti, shamipya, sharupya, ekatva, even though they are offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Yeah. So the remaining, we're going to characteristics of pure devotion is Jnana, Kamadi, Anavritam. So Anavritam, I looked up in my Sanskrit dictionary, also known as ChatGPT. Okay. So an, it means not without. So it's not covered. So it's not veiled or enveloped by Jnana or Karma. Now, as we mentioned before, sometimes this is misunderstood. So hopefully in the time that we have left, we're going to make this a bit clear. So in order for us to advance, we have to be free from the influence of karma and jnana and generally other non-devotional practices in our everyday lives. Now, so fruitive activities means karma and cultivation of knowledge. But having said that, involvement in karma and the cultivation of knowledge is inevitable, living in the society that we live in. So that means even those on the path of pure devotion are not exceptions to this, you know. But some kinds of work and some kinds of knowledge, excuse me. But there are specifically some kinds of work and some kinds of knowledge that are harmful to pure devotion, and some are not. So what is harmful and what is not? So obviously, if we engage in things that are harmful, then our mood of devotion will be avritam. It will cover the mood of pure devotion, and it will be a semblance of devotion. We had a whole few weeks of discussion on that. Yeah. If we deliberately indulge in things that are harmful, then we'll be practicing a semblance of devotion. So this, so why might we take up these things that are harmful? It may be by neglecting our basic spiritual practices of sadhana. We may find ourselves watering down our pure devotional resolve, or by bad association as well, overly associating with materialistic persons, and kind of even subtly, you may not notice it, but you take on their values and outlook on life, which may be opposed to the principles of pure devotion. So you have to be very careful. And you see this picture here. What's this picture all about? Yeah, what's this picture about? Well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in a book called the Bhakti Tattva Viveka, he describes, just as parents to have a newborn child, so they're very careful to protect the child, isn't it? From too much. Sometimes when they see it's a hot day or it's a cold day, they really try and protect the baby. Yeah, protect it from the sun, the cold. Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions wild animals, because it must be an issue if you're living in a village in India. You got to be careful. There's tigers and things like that. So just as parents protect, he mentions, he compares bhakti to the newborn baby girl. So we must be careful to protect our newborn devotion from influences of speculative knowledge and fruitive endeavors. And he mentions for mystic perfections. Yeah. So it's same if the parents don't give shelter to the infant, then the infant's not going to grow. So, interesting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives that example when he likens bhakti, the seed of bhakti that we have, seed of pure bhakti that we have. He likens it to a young baby girl. So it has to be protected. And that's what comes from studying this verse by Rupa Goswami. So, yes. Now, so we have to be careful. Now, having said that, if we can, devotees at a stage of Nishta, they can be relatively free from these influences. Yeah. So we want to get to the stage of Nishta, and that will be described. What is the stage of Nishta? That's a whole part of Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, and we'll describe that. So what type of knowledge is detrimental to devotional service? You see this picture here? This is a picture from perhaps the early 19th century. This person's really into books. A bit like Alexander, hundreds of books. But here, this man, you see him, he's got one book under his legs, he's got one book under his arm. He's got one book in one hand and another book in another hand. So what type of knowledge is detrimental to a devotional service, and the obvious one?
Trying to get knowledge from too many places, too many books, too many.
Yeah, that comes later, but it's impersonal conception. Okay, that's that one the acharyas always repeat. Knowledge that leads them to an impersonal conception of the absolute truth. So you really don't want to study Shankar Acharya's commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, for example. Yeah, we don't want to cultivate that type of knowledge unless we have a specific mission, preaching mission, that it may entail understanding what they say on that. So, but generally not. So that's an obvious one, okay? As we mentioned earlier, it's okay to cultivate knowledge of our constitutional position. So what's that in Sanskrit, to cultivate knowledge? There's these three words, which all the Vedas can be termed under, either one of the three, cultivating knowledge of our position. Going once. When I say it again, you'll go, oh yeah, Sambandha. Okay, Sambandha, Abhudaya, and Priya. See, I told you we'd say Sambandha. So that we should. So we should cultivate knowledge. And you'll see later, we might not get to it today, but you'll see later how it's very important to cultivate knowledge, either by reading or by hearing, or by dint of pure chanting. Okay. So we need to cultivate that knowledge of our constitutional position in relationship to Krishna and the material world. So it's one of the limbs of pure devotional service, Divya Hridi Prakasito. Okay, so we've got that. We don't want to cultivate knowledge about impersonalism. We want to cultivate knowledge. Yeah, it's because we're saying we should be free of speculative, free of coverings, freedom from jnana. So describing, so what does that mean? So these things we should cultivate. Yeah. So where do we find this knowledge? It's in Prabhupada's purports. Yeah, and this helps us to awaken in the sense of pure devotional service. Yeah, Prabhupada, as you know, Prabhupada is unalloyed pure devotee of the Lord. So how does a pure devotee think? What is the intimate inner workings of a pure devotee's mind? If you want to know that, you read Prabhupada's purports. Yeah. He describes what is a pure devotee's outlook and view on everything. And you can read it. And when we read it, we want to cultivate that. He shows what is the thoughts and mindset of a pure devotee. Yeah, so that we want to cultivate. So now also Raj mentions here that we shouldn't worry that gathering this type of knowledge is materially motivated, because it's the urge to know Krishna. So it's an impetus for bhakti. Yeah, so we want to know, like we have a group reading where we're reading so many books, Brihat Bhagavatamrita and the Sankalpakamudi, Bhagavad Gita, and we're cultivating this knowledge. Why? Because we want to know Krishna and we want inspiration in our bhakti. So that's okay. Yeah, that's good. Now, having said that, even this transcendental knowledge can become an obstacle. Say when it might be an obstacle to this studying Sastra, studying Brihat Bhagavatamrita, studying all different, Srimad Bhagavatam. When might it become an obstacle to devotion?
When we think we know too much.
Yeah, that's it. When we think, that's one. But first, Marge mentions that we neglect service in favor of culturing this knowledge. What does it say in Prabhupada's books? You should render devotional service. No, I was going to read. read. I mean, study. But we have to, a servant has service. So as Marge mentions, a misuse occurs when devotees neglect service in favor of culturing knowledge. Now, it's different if you have a particular service. If you're preaching in India or you're preaching in Pacific and you're exposed to different sampradayas and things like that, it may be your specific service to really deeply cultivate knowledge of the different acharyas, commentaries, etc., the different darshans, but you're doing that under guidance of the devotees. But then, as Mother Chandravali said here, if that advanced knowledge, you begin to think you're superior to other Vaishnavas. Yeah.
Not just that, even when somebody's giving a class, you go, I've heard this before, I know this, your mood gets into that.
Yeah, it can be. I know what it's nonsense. Yeah, so we have to be careful. That's why devotional so it's very purifying, because you have to be on the lookout for your undevotional thoughts and minds. Yeah, and it comes up. So it's called anartha nivritti, where first you become aware of it. Now, sometimes what you're going to find if someone's becoming there is becoming a problem is, do you find that devotees, they might bicker over really fine points of philosophy just to put others down? You see that? It used to really become more of an issue when the internet and Pamho and all the online stuff. Sometimes I read, I mean, I never read it for more than a few seconds or for a minute. Sometimes I read these disagreements amongst devotees online, and I can only read it for 2 minutes because it really gets nasty. It's really unpleasant what they say about each other sometimes. So that's an example where bickering over, you can speak about the fine points of philosophy, but it's just to put others down, like you think you know more than anybody else. So and so it's in that light, it's in that regard that Krishnadas Kaviraj, he denounces this conduct. And he quotes this verse here. He gives us this verse here in the slide. If one becomes a bookworm, reading many books and scriptures and hearing many commentaries and the instructions of many men, this will produce doubt within his heart. One cannot in this way ascertain the real goal of life. So, Maharaj is bringing up this verse in regards to just this thinking one is superior because one is cultivating even transcendental knowledge. So that's that is an obstacle to cultivating transcendental knowledge. So if we're on the path of pure devotion, we have to look out for that. You may be studying Sandarbhas, maybe studying so many books, but we have to make sure we're not becoming proud. Even it got to think, even some earlier followers of Prabhupada, they started to study Sanskrit. And then they came back and were criticizing Prabhupada's translations. Started to criticizing their spiritual master. Yeah. So that's where it may, much to their detriment and eventually downfall from the pure devotional service. Yeah, so okay. Ramanath Sukha.
Yes, this is a very subtle issue of we want to have knowledge of Krishna Bhakti, and there's an overabundance of books, not just Prabhupada's books. There's all kinds of books, Acharyas, other gurus' books, so many books, so much knowledge. But the issue is becoming proud of one's knowledge. Now, sometimes it's difficult. A devotee may think, oh, I'm reading different books and reading different books. This is all good for Krishna consciousness. But sometimes devotees may advise such a devotee, you need to reflect. Are you becoming proud? And if someone's, saying that actually you're becoming proud from your knowledge, a devotee should take it very seriously, because the general tendency is, oh, I'm not proud. I'm just learning more. But the pride is a very subtle thing. But this is the issue, becoming proud of.
Yeah, as what Ramanath Sukha was saying, it can be very subtle. It's like radiation. You don't see it, you don't taste it, you can't hear it, but it affects you. So that's why you have to be really introspective and be honest with yourself. I mean, I'll be truthful. Like, sometimes I give a class and I don't like the class I gave because my mood was wrong. I just want to impress people. I can feel it, and it's a big weight on me, and I don't like the mood. So Krishna helps as well. but we want
Yeah.
to really, because it can be subtle, and it can creep up on you over 5, 10, 15 years. So I don't want to scare everyone. So that's why it's good to have friends. It's good to have, good to associate devotees, and good to, as Ramanath Sukha said, to be self-reflective, But ultimately,
Especially,
yeah, go on.
especially if a devotee friend is saying, Prabhu, I think you become a little proud of your knowledge, and you know, take it seriously.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
That's where the association of devotees is helpful.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can be bookworms and feeling ourselves superior because we're so full of knowledge, but not actually understanding that that knowledge is a source of our Maya.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. There's another point I was going to mention that. Yeah. So we have to be, we have to be careful. Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Should we not study Prabhupada's books thoroughly before we go into other books? Try and understand what Prabhupada's
Yeah,
saying.
well, I mean, for us, I mean, we've got a lifetime of books there,
Yeah.
just in the form of Prabhupada's books. There's plenty to study. But just keep this point in mind. Just keep this point. That's the point I was going to make. Yeah. Krishna loves his devotees. He doesn't like them to become proud, and he will make sure that he will pull the mat sometime from under our feet, and he will make arrangements. If we're sincere and we become misled, then don't worry. Krishna's going to help us. He's going to give us some humble pie, a big dose of humble pie to eat, where we think, oh, actually, I'm not as great as I thought I was, etc. All right. Now, I want to cover this as well today. Let me just see how many slides we've got left. Religious rituals. Okay. So, Kamada Anavritam. So, now, in a greater society, say Hindu society, or even in the West here, maybe all your families here, there's many, or even not Hindus, but many social functions and religious rituals are inevitable for the most part. You're lucky if you're going to get away from having to attend or having to take part in social functions and religious rituals. I think some families give up on devotees and they forget and they stop pestering them for these things. Yeah. But they can be done in small measure, but they should be done in a mood of detachment. Yeah, in a way that doesn't cover one's pure devotion. So we can explain the mentality of that. So it can be done in a small measure and in a specific mood of detached service, then that won't cover one's pure devotion. Now, if someone purposefully indulges in these things and places, great faith in them more than the principles of bhakti, then Maharaj mentions they're muddying the waters of Uttama Bhakti. Yeah, if they put great faith in them. So an example of fruitive work that's not harmful to the cultivation of pure devotion is, for instance, is attending a relative's funeral. Okay, so that was the example of that is Jagannath Mishra. When he passed away, then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Gaya to perform a ritualistic ceremony called Pinda. Yeah. Now, if he were, or say someone passes away in your family, but you don't attend the funeral, what would happen? What might happen? Well,
Shame.
go on.
Shame.
Shame, yeah.
Shame
People
you.
criticize you. But it maybe depends on the specific situation, depends on your relationship. It may be a no-brainer that you go along and you actually want to go to pay respects to someone you have a relationship with.
Yeah. And you can take Mahagalans, Mahadis, Mahadat.
Yeah, there's so much you can do.
You can do so much, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, people will criticize, and then if you really refuse to attend in the name, I'm a devotee of Krishna, we do not need do these things, then they may start criticizing devotees, start criticizing the process of devotional service. And yeah. Okay. Now let's go here. Astrology.
Also, you can show what a good Krishna conscious person you are by your actions.
Yeah.
You know, being there.
Generally, yeah, generally devotees who do attend funerals, or not just attend funerals, but they may be there at a time when a family member is leaving their body. They're often the source of shelter for all the other family members.
Mm.
The other family members got no idea what to do. They're all sitting around the bed. They don't know what to do. But devotees are very clear what's happening. They know exactly what's happening, and they know what to do. And they know about reincarnation. So often devotees are a source of shelter for other family members in that situation. Yeah. So that's why. So that, you're doing, you get the idea. Okay. So astrology. Okay, this gives us another example. So astrology, basically what it is, it's a description of the workings of the three modes of material nature. It's like a divinatory science. Yeah. Now there is Vedic astrology, which follows. I mean, I don't know much about astrology, but there's the Bhrigu Samhita. I've heard some amazing stories about that. We won't introduce Swami to some amazing stories, but there's Bhrigu Samhita. So it's useful for generally people in general to understand how to organize their lives in accordance with their karma. Yeah. So devotees may consult astrologer to give them an indication of the influences of their karma is having on them, so they can prepare themselves to deal with what's coming. Yeah. And they can maximize their devotional service to Krishna. Okay. So what we're saying here is that in going through these things, fruitive work, Pinda, Homa, even Jyotish, and my management is yoga asanas as well here. Yeah. So there's a particular guideline to determine whether this activity is acceptable to devotional service. So when is Pinda acceptable? When it's not, when is Homa acceptable? When is astrology acceptable? When it's covering pure devotion. Yeah. So he quotes this verse here. I should have put it up, but Dhamma Sudasda Pumsham Vishvakshena Kutasaya Nopaditi Yadi Ratim Shama Eva Hi Kevaram. The occupational duty a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the messages of the personality of Godhead. So in other words, we shouldn't perform these fruitive acts if they're not useful in some way for devotional service. Now, okay, hope that hasn't confused everyone. Now, we can explain it a bit more here. So when does fruitive work cover pure devotional service? As we mentioned in the beginning, to the extent that it's done out of excessive attachment rather than detached duty. So Lord Chaitanya, he didn't do it out of excessive attachment. Externally, it made it look like that, but it was detached duty. So then devotion, but if we're doing it just out of excessive attachment, then devotion is proportionately lost. So in other words, it can be illustrated in this mindset. If you're thinking, if I don't do this fruitive activity, I will incur sin. That's one. And if I do this, my devotional life will improve. You follow? If I don't do this, if I don't go to this Garba dance, or whatever you call it, Navaratri, then it's sinful, But if I go to Navaratri, then I can make advancement in pure devotional service. You know, so the first one means you don't have faith in the foundation of devotion. Shavadamam pariyachyatyamam ekam savanam bhaja. Yeah. And the second one means that you're thinking that fruitive work can give rise to pure devotion. You know, if I go to every funeral, I guess if you preach, it's different, but if I take part in every religious act that my family asks me, I'm going to make advancement in pure devotional service. Yeah. So, yeah. What's the time? 1 minute. Let's just finish this here. So in the case of Pinda, okay, devotion becomes covered when devotees, as we mentioned, will think they'd incur sin if they do not attend a relative's funeral, and that their devotion will prosper if they do. If it's Homa, then devotees become so absorbed in performing all the details of the fire sacrifices that they think devotional practice or events like opening a temple or deity installation are incomplete without all these detailed rituals. Now, there was a verse I didn't quote, not a verse, but Maharaj brings in the episode when Krishna and Balaram were installed in Vrindavan. And as far as Prabhupada was concerned, the installation was complete through the chanting of Harinam Sankirtan. But just to satisfy all the locals, he brought in the pundits or to do the Homa. Okay. Now, astrology is covered when one has more faith in your astrologer than you do the spiritual master. You got more faith in the astrology than you do the guru's directions, you know. So it means your pure devotion's been covered. It's become a semblance of devotion. Okay. All right. Is that, hopefully that's a bit more clear now of what this means. Gana Kamari Anavritam. Okay. We have one more slide, but we tackle that next week. It's here, this one here. There's many pitfalls which we're seeing. Yeah. So how to stay without going down the pit. All right. Any final questions here? See who's here. Dhruva Maharaj, welcome. Hare Krishna. Mohini Gopika, Pusha Nirvana, Vijay Krishna, Ramai, Vishalni, welcome. Jai Red, Prema. Okay, we've got a core team. Okay, our core team is it. All right. Any final questions then? Otherwise, we can not stop, but we'll pause there and we'll continue next week. Okay. Going once.
Yeah.
Going twice. Going 3 times. So thank you, everyone, very
Hare
much for joining us in this discussion. I hope it's of interest and some inspiration in your spiritual life. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Process of pure devotional service ki jai. Rupa Goswami's amazing verse ki jai. Did I go?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, so I got 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.